The Remington 740. How accurate actually is it? So, made a video about this rifle. I built this like a few months ago, and people seem to like that video about it. I really appreciate everybody kind of leaving their comments. Let me know about some of the stories you had with this rifle. So the reputation of this rifle is some people love it, some people hate it, some people think it just shoots 1-inch ragged holes all day long, some people think it can't hit the broadside of a barn from within the barn. And sure, but it's actually kind of difficult to find real pictures or videos or anything about this rifle from like just an objective accuracy measure. And so that's what I intended to do this past weekend. I took this rifle with a scope and I took a bunch of different types of ammunition, including some very nice ammunition, out, and we tested the actual accuracy. I said in the last video that this rifle probably was about 3.5 MOA, maybe 4. That's about all you can expect from this rifle. Again, it's a semi-automatic sporting rifle, if you don't know, from the 1950s. Remington before this had a reputation for making semi-automatic rifles, obviously with their Model 8s and 81s. These things have a reputation of either amazing accuracy or terrible accuracy. They have a reputation of either they're incredibly reliable or not very reliable. So what can it actually do? We are going to test every single one of these ammunition types. ELDMs, some wonderful Remington core locks, some European trash, and some M2 ball spec ammo out of this beautiful Remington 740 that I built. And it is now sporting a Leopold, what is this, like a 4-14?
VX1 4-12.
VX1 4-12. So
a budget scope, but
he says budget scope.
It's like $150.
Okay, it'll work fine. It's more scope than most people ever put on those rifles.
More or less.
I recently hit 1,000 subscribers, which is pretty cool. Thanks for that. I don't monetize this page at all, but if you do want to support me, I've got some books that I write. They're in the description. I've got Amazon links, paperback, ebook, whatever. I like to write books in my spare time, so give that a shot. Anyway, back to the video. Since some of you might be thinking, well, who is this guy? Can he even really shoot a rifle? How is this, scientific whatsoever? I went ahead and took my buddy out with me, and we had his very, very, very nice rifle that's essentially a laser beam, just to calibrate us. Like, how are we shooting that day? We're about to get a baseline accuracy, because it might be the rifle's amazing and we just can't shoot, but to do that, my buddy Adam here, what are we actually shooting today?
This is a G-Series Remington 700 as an AAC-SD. Bought it probably 2011 or so. And then it got reworked with a 24-inch Krieger M24 contour barrel, 11 1/4 twist, 5R rifling, 308 Winchester.
It's a laser beam. So let's see what it can do.
Well, 4 of the 5 are touching.
4 of the 5 are touching. Okay. So I've heard on the internet that the Remington 740 can actually just do cloverleaf patterns at 100. So that rifle seems to be better than your custom-built Remington 700.
Probably.
Probably. So
it is an older Remington.
Yeah, more to come. The results of the baseline were that each of us shot about a half-minute group, or about half an inch at 100 yards. My buddy actually wasn't satisfied with his own group and then went ahead and shot another 5-round group that was even smaller. So, his rifle, fantastic, wonderful build. Both of us doing pretty well that day. Okay, we are about to check the calibration targets, so let's just see if you and I can actually shoot. That's Adam's. That would be mine. So I would say his rifle shoots pretty dang well. Also, preliminary shooting, those 3 shots were from the PPU M2 spec out of the 740, which honestly,
That's not terrible.
we might be onto something. So for ammunition that we tested that day, we started out with some standard M2 spec PPU ammunition. This is ammunition that would be used in an M1 Garand. Pretty safe on this rifle. Then we moved on to some ELDM match from Hornady. This is exceedingly expensive ammunition, which did pretty well. I also had some European trash ammunition from S&B. I'm kidding. This ammunition is actually pretty good, but this is 180 grain soft point, doing about 2,700 feet per second. A real nice, basic, hunting load. But cream of the crop here, this box of kind of old Remington core locks, the deadliest mushroom in the woods. I think my father found this in his study. I don't know where it came from. He doesn't know where it came from. Remington ammunition, Remington gun. It's got to work out, right? Oh, that looks on.
Well, it's under a 1-inch group.
Hey, look at that. 1 inch at 25. Perfect. So we've got the 740 sighted in, and the plan is we're going to do about 2 5-shot groups from each of this with each ammunition type that we have, and just to get a really broad idea of what this rifle is kind of capable of. Not a very deep accuracy test, but it'll give us a really good idea. Not only can this guy build just about any single rifle and make it accurate as shit, he's also the scariest person I've ever met with a rifle. He does barrier work at 1,000 yards cold and can hit steel consistently. So I brought the right guy for this test. This is the definition of race gas through a Pinto. If I wanted to know what this rifle could do, I would shoot it, 20 or 30 times, bare minimum, at one target with one type of ammunition, and then I would measure that and do statistical analysis on it, right? That's not really how most people shoot. Most people are only putting on a precision target, up 5, maybe 10 shots. So while we're doing the shooting and the experimentation and all that stuff, keep that in mind. I'm not saying this is perfectly indicative, but it's pretty dang indicative. All right, ELDMs. $47 a box. The ejection is wonderful. How'd it feel?
Well, if we very carefully crop the target and don't show 2 of the 5 impacts, oh yeah, it's laser beam.
Fantastic. Here we have the first group for the ELDMs, the 740, and if you just forget about that guy, that's pretty decent. Then I shot it, and okay, ELDM match out of a 740, probably never been done. That's pretty decent. Now you can get off of that match grade shit, Sonny, because it's a Remington rifle, it needs Remington ammunition. Deadliest mushroom in the woods, let's go. Oh, look at it.
Oh, that gorgeous patina.
There's a patina on it. That's how you know it's vintage. Remington core lock. Let's see if you can kill a deer. Many people thought this rifle in the comment section of the last video is just exceedingly accurate and all this stuff. And, it got me thinking, what about maybe if we weren't looking at a semi-automatic rifle from the time, what about maybe a bolt action? What is a comparable bolt action to this? Again, this rifle was probably built, late 50s, early 60s, something like that. Well, my buddy actually has a Remington 721. This was his grandfather's gun. It's in 30-06, just a classic deer killing machine. So we brought that out. We put some Hornady ELDM match ammunition through it just to get another baseline. I want to see, we know what a modern rifle is going to do. Modern rifle is going to be amazing, right? We're trying to figure out what this can do. The delta between those two is a little bit unfair, right? So, what does your typical 1950s off the shelf bolt action sporting rifle do at 100 yards? All right, we have a contemporary to the 740. Is it 1955, you said?
1958.
1958 Remington 721. This is a secondary control measure. We'll put 5 shots. Same, kind of different. Imagine being so poor that you have to load your rifle yourself. The results for my buddy 721 were actually pretty good. He held like 2.5 minute of angle. I'm going to put the picture of it up here. And that's really good for the rifle of the time. The ammunition obviously helps. The ELDMs are very accurate and very consistently loaded ammunition.
Right into the ejection port.
So recycling. Nice. That was your ELDM. That was my ELDM. That was your 721 with the ELDM.
Yep.
Pretty decent. This
Was the
S&B. This is S&B. Your S&B was
down there.
down here.
Yep, that was S&B.
This is S&B.
Yep.
This was. What was this? We should have marked this. I know this was Remington Corlock.
That might have been Corlock down there.
This is Corlock.
Yeah, I think
It makes sense because I was aiming here for Corlock, and you were aiming here for Corlock.
Yeah.
So these two are Corlock.
Corlock.
This was PPU. Okay, we got to figure it out.
Big green, most accurate.
Yeah. So what did we learn?
Well, 721's the 740 is still incredibly pleasant to shoot.
It's a very pleasant rifle.
It's basically ate everything that we fed it.
0 actual malfunctions.
Yeah, it's
So
under its
obviously the most reliable gun in the world.
under its own power. It does all right.
Yeah. Do we see any Sub-MOA groups?
Well, if you discount the 2 rounds from the first Hornet ELDs, yeah, that's 2 of those are touching. That was all right. The rest of the group is about 3 MOA.
And I think we probably shot a 740 more than almost anyone has ever shot one of those guns.
Certainly in one sitting.
Yeah. Did it kill a deer today?
No.
Dang it.
So it's abject failure. Throw it away.
Abject failure. So what did this rifle actually do? So first off, we have the ELDM match ammunition, and my group size for that was about just around 3 minute of angle. So pretty decent, right? My buddy's group size was roughly 4 minute of angle. So a little bit of a difference. That comes out to a little over 4 inches for his target and about 3 inches for mine. So how did the deadliest mushroom in the woods do? It was around 3.38 inches, maybe 3.25 MOA. I would say that this stuff on average probably about 3.5 minutes out of this gun. What about the S&B? The S&B did, again, just under 4-inch groups at 100 yards for both of us, and around, which is like 3.75 MOA or something. The Privy Partisan M2 spec 150 grain ball ammunition out of this rifle did right at about 4.2 MOA, which is about just under 4.5 inches. So pretty respectable. Everything that we shot from the 2 of us out of this rifle, again, shooting it, letting it cool down, shooting it again, being as scientific as we could do or felt like doing. Best we can get, around 3 inches. Worst we can get, a little over 4 MOA, right? Maybe like 4.25, 4.3 inches. It's not a sub-minute of angle gun. Does anybody want to buy it? It's clearly trash, right? Well, not really, because what does that look like in the real world? You could have a modern bolt action that does sub-MOA like this, relatively budget build that I have. You could even have a nice semi-automatic large frame AR that also shoots sub-MOA if I do my part. And that's fantastic. These are both kind of budget builds. But that's the modern era. The 740 is not from a modern era. So let's look at some contemporaries, I guess. The first one, the classic M16A1. Well, M16s and M4s, etc., they've always had roughly around like 4 to 4.5 MOA requirements for the rifle itself to be able to shoot. That's not like, stacking it. And obviously these guns can do better, but the requirement for the military in the US was like, I think 4.5 inches group, like 4.5 inches at 100 yards. What about the FAL, the right arm of the free world? I love this rifle. This rifle was adopted by like 90 countries, right? I mean, the accuracy requirements for this thing was all over the place. In general, this rifle, if it was doing 4 MOA, fantastic. Most places had like 5 MOA requirement. That's your baseline. If it can't shoot that, we got to go rebuild it or something. The best I've ever seen these rifles do is like 3 MOA. The infield, right? Beautiful, wonderful. I love the Mark 1. I love the number 1 Mark 3s. I think these are really cool rifles. These things, I've never seen one that can do better than like 5 inches at 100 yards. And the requirements for back in the day weren't that much better. I think it was like 3.5, 4 inches at 100 yards. That was good. That was fantastic. Not necessarily known for their accuracy, but infields were used like a ton for competition, right? So this rifle didn't shoot MOA, but it's a great rifle. Did wonderful. What about that one terrible movie with Jude Law in it? Enemy at the Gates. That documentary. Mosins, oftentimes called garbage rods, right? These things were expected to hold about 4.5 inches at 100 yards. When they weren't in this configuration. This rifle will do that easily with surplus ammunition and goes to about 2.5 inches with my hand loads, which is kind of insane. I'm not saying that every Mosin can do that. I'm saying that this one in particular with a particular load does that. Remember that when we talk about these averages. On average, this Mosin does, 4.5 inches. Perfectly acceptable. What about your Mausers, right? What about K98s? Those things, people cream themselves over German shit, right? This is not a German gun, but this is basically a Model 98 Mauser. I'd be thrilled if this thing did 4 inches at 100 yards, which is about all I can have been able to get out of it. And the German requirements were, if I see my notes here, the Germans had to hit like 4.5 to maybe 4.9 MOA with the K98s. That's it, right? This idea that Mausers were some incredibly accurate Uber rifle, that's not real. 4.5 to 5 MOA, just like every other bolt action of the period. What about the M1 Garand? The M1 Garand has been used for competition. It's America's semi-automatic rifle. That was like, let's see here, 5 inches at 100 yards. That's what they had to actually keep. And M14s had to keep 5.5. And they bumped that accuracy number out because none of them were passing it, because the M14 is a failure. But the M1 Garand's like super accurate rifle, right? Everybody says that, and it's does just fine. It's the AKM. These rifles, from what I can tell and the things that I've read, again, it's got to hold about 4.5 inches at 100 yards, which these rifles will easily do. The AKM, as manufactured, more accurate than our M1 Garands as manufactured, which should not surprise anyone because they are from different eras. Just like this rifle and your modern bolt action, savage, aero precision, whatever you want to use, they're from different eras. You should expect different things out of them. You can expect a 4 minute of angle rifle to keep on a target, a torso target, at 400 yards without any issue. Torso, about 12 inches. At 400, 4 MOA, 12 inches, no problem. It'll do it. 4 minute of angle. Something that is considered completely inaccurate and you would throw the rifle away these days. But back in the day, that was perfectly acceptable because that's what the manufacturing could do. The 740 is not a 1 MOA gun. I don't care if you say that you have one that can shoot clover leaves. I promise you it can't do that consistently. But that's okay. It doesn't have to. This thing will absolutely put down a deer at 200 yards. No problem. And if you miss, it's on you, not the rifle. So there you have it. That's the video. About 3.5, 4 MOA is what you should expect out of these guns. which is perfectly fine. It's in line with literally everything at the time. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I got some links down at the bottom of the page if you want to like buy my books at all. I appreciate you.